I see dead people.
Hot shit.
Here's Johnny.
Stop.
We have such sights to show you.
Bring the motherfucking ruckus. Fuck you too.
Yeah.
So do you think Count Chocula likes eating ass?
I mean, it's in the name, right?
Yeah. I bet Boo Berry loves them boobies.
Yeah. And, Fruit Groot is just a queer.
Yeah. Fucking.
God damn it.
Frankenberry.
I don't know, he's a
Frankenberry?
perfect, yeah, he's a perfectly fine gentleman.
Ooh. What's the wolf one?
I think that's Fruit Groot.
Ah, got it.
And then there's Yummy Mummy.
Yummy Mummy. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
Hello. Hello to the Yummy Mummies out there and to the
Come on, dude. We just started.
Nothing wrong with that. Come on.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
I was teaching children the one day, and I was this close to calling them a bunch of retards, and I was like, yo, a bunch of and the one student was like, looking over, was like, oh my god, he's gonna do it. And then I would go, Jax! And he just started dying, and he was like, Mr. H, I thought you were gonna call us retards.
You're right. I was gonna.
But you'll never know that. Yeah. So is now the time where we talk about Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and how much it's a cinematic masterpiece, even though you won't let me watch it with you?
Mr. H, the things I don't know can fill a dick.
Oh.
Canary.
A wide one, a short one? What are we talking about here? We're talking about little chub, big old honker.
I will talk about Jeepers Creepers.
I'll talk about Jeepers Creepers.
I don't want to talk about Winnie the Pooh.
I
Blood
love
and Honey.
Jeepers Creepers. It's a shame that the director diddled some kids.
He made one of the coolest horror movies ever made after that, so.
Sometimes you just gotta chuck some bodies down a hole.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta chuck some bodies down a hole.
And then be like, oh, hey, get back here. You saw me do that. Beep, beep.
Beep, beep.
Beep, beep.
I think the fun thing about Jeepers Creepers is that it's like 3 different movies in one.
Mm.
There's this weird kind of like hitchhiker, like road drama aspect. Like, what was the first movie? First movie Spielberg did was about this dude in a big truck who just keeps fucking chasing this dude on a highway.
Oh, I don't know if I know that one.
Yeah, I'm
just thinking.
Literally, like his first movie before Jaws.
I'm just thinking about Joyride. I need me some candy cane. Candy cane, you out there?
Duel.
Oh, 1971. Good lord.
Uh-huh. A business commuter is pursued and terrorized by a malevolent driver of a massive tractor trailer. Literally one of the first things he made. It's what got him in the door for Jaws, which was only a couple years later. And there you go.
The film that started it all.
You're looking at a big, grimy-looking truck that's just ramming up some little sedan's ass. And it starts to give you some of them Jeepers Creepers vibes.
Burr, burr.
About a creepy...
yeah, right on their ass.
Creepy, brownish, grayish truck just bullying people on the road. And it starts off that way. You know, Jeepers Creepers is very... It's very downplayed for the beginning. You just think wrong place, wrong time.
People on the road.
For a moment there. Creepy hitchhiker-looking dude. And then it turns into...
It's not really until the cop scene, when the cops are, like, going with them to, like, check it out, that we're like, oh, fuck, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah. And then it goes into, like... When he actually goes down into the hole, it goes into, like, deep Lovecraftian territory. Like...
I was getting, like, House of Wax vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something weird.
Bodies all strung up.
Mm-hmm.
What's the word? Preserved.
Yeah.
Forever with the weird, like...
Embalming.
Yeah.
And it's like okay, and then we get hit with the left-hand turn that it's a creature feature. This is not just like a person. You know, up until that point, you're just thinking it's a fucked up person, right?
Dude in a hat.
Yeah. So we start off with weird, aggressive driving, hitchhiker, vibes. Then we get into Lovecraftian killer, serial killer vibes. And then we get into creature feature. All in one movie. And it's adept at switching from piece to piece to piece. And, like, I don't know, like, the thing about Jeepers Creepers that has, like, haunted me ever since I was a kid was just, like, that slow shot at the end. Hearing Justin Long scream in agony several times, like, high-pitched, literally being killed agony. Like, the hardest screams I've ever heard in a horror movie before. And then you go down into the basement and you see the record player and you see him stitching some stuff. And then you turn and you literally see, like, the front of Justin Long has just been ripped off of his body.
You can see the origins of Hostel just, like, going into Eli Roth's head from watching this. Like, ooh, I can make this into something.
You could oh man, I would love to ask Eli Roth what he thought of Jeepers Creepers, because that movie probably was, like, would be up there for him. Because I can see an element of, like, Tarantino, Takashi Miike. You know, there's a little bit of like From Dusk Till Dawn and a little bit of Audition in, like, everything that Eli Roth makes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, then you just have, like, Piranha, where it's just, schlock. It's just schlock. But
there was no ghosts in the first one, though. That didn't start till the second one, right? We had Ghost Derry and I think another ghost in the second one with the school bus people.
yeah, we got to go back and rewatch that. I didn't want to watch it before we started recording because I didn't want the recording to get too far away from us, like, talking about a ton of shit. Because, like, we very frequently just get lost talking about stuff sometimes. And I really do want to finish this story today. But I am excited to go back and rewatch the other Jeepers Creepers movies because
I still haven't seen the new one, too, so I'm excited for it.
I remember liking the third one. Because someone, like, went back and did, like, a prequel with lore. And I think the fourth one touches on the same lore a little bit. I think the same, maybe not the same person, but maybe the same team did 3 and that did 4.
I think I didn't like the third one, but I think the reason I didn't like the third one is because I saw it at a drive-in, and it was just too dark. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. But I could be wrong.
I was going to say 3, I don't know if 3 had a big release. I remember watching 3 on, like, fucking Netflix or something. Like, I don't, and it was recent. It wasn't super old. It didn't come out. It didn't come out the same time as the other ones.
Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get them peepers? So 2 came out in 2003.
Yeah, see? Huge.
2017.
Huge jump.
Yeah.
The first one was 2001, the second one was 2003, and then people found out about Victor Salva and buried the franchise until about 15 years later.
That is a lifetime.
When someone said, no, this is actually pretty cool. Let's take this away from him and put it in our own direction. And, oh, he directed the third one. Did not know that.
Interesting.
So even after being buried, he came back and said, fuck you, I'm going to do a third one.
Maybe he wasn't buried until after that one came out, actually.
No, people knew about
Way
it a
before.
long time ago.
Oh, they should have came out with one 23 years after the first one. That would have been fun.
That would have been...
Now. Literally this year.
Aw, people didn't like the first
Wait a
one.
minute. Can I name all the... Stu, Jamie, Carrie, okay. Just taking famous people from horror films and putting their names in there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Publicized in 2006.
Oh, so it was after the second one. Yeah. I remember
3 years after the second
I remember
one,
people... Yeah, but he was working on the third one.
okay.
He was working on the third one, and it's what set the third one off.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then. They just finally pushed it through after those years have gone by.
I still love that he played the fucking...
The creeper?
He played the fucking creeper.
Yeah, he is a creeper.
Because he is.
Nobody else can play this role but me.
Oh, no. It says Jonathan Breck. So when did...
Oh, he's a victim. Maybe he's one of the people in the house. Or not the house, the fucking,
I wanted
the
him
chapel.
I wanted him to be the creeper. Because he is a creeper.
Couldn't have got too meta.
Sorry.
Who's the creeper in the fourth one, then?
Just creepers too. Well, that's why I'm saying the fourth one was obviously made by a different team.
Yeah.
So now I'm more excited for the fourth one, because it really is someone saying...
We can pick this
Fuck
up and
this,
run with it.
fuck this dude. But then again, I heard it's awful. So it's just like I'm excited for it. I've been excited for it, but I've been wanting to rewatch the series before I go and rewatch the new one naturally. But the film is a reboot of Victor Salva's film series. Interesting. Okay, now I'm more excited for the fourth one now. I think I will belay my judgment on the fourth one, knowing that Salva, being a creep, made 3 of them and then got promptly kicked off the franchise and let someone else take the reins. So now I'm even more excited for the fourth one. I was already pretty excited because I had seen some of the clips and I said, oh, that's pretty cool. And, like, I know it's setting up to be a haunted house flick.
Oh, okay.
So it's like people stumble on his abode and they have to defend themselves, which is very
Halloween
resurrection. Yeah,
let's get Busta Rhymes.
Busta Rhymes to do some martial arts. I'm into it.
Hell House LLC.
But like, you know, just because some piece of shit makes, you know, an awesome fucking horror movie doesn't mean that someone else can't come along and take it and reclaim it and make something better, so that we don't have to remember that the original creator was a piece of shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's art. You don't have to love the person that created the art to love the art.
That's a good point.
I feel like there's plenty of dickhead directors out there.
Yeah. There's a lot of music that I listen to who I'm not a fan of the people who made the music, but I love the music.
Very true.
Yeah. People can't control their willies.
It's almost like we're animals deep down inside. Sometimes you just gotta throw 4 alligators at a police officer and call it a day.
Call it a day. And sometimes you are the police officer and all your partners keep killing themselves and you keep relocating and finding spooky things to talk about. And you never once sit down and say, I wonder why all of my partners killed themselves after these events. Maybe I should kill myself.
Well, here's the thing. I'm just gonna keep on going because everybody else is just weak. And somebody's gotta do this job right.
All these limp dick...
I want to tell my grandboy one day, hey.
I'm a sexual tyrannosaurus.
And you have my blood in your veins. And you too will one day roam this world like the dinosaurs before you.
God damn it, let's get into it. There's no reason to talk about what we did on the first episode because all of the stories are disjointed and we don't know where they're going. And they're all just random little events where the main grandpa and his partner get spooked and then the partner kills themselves and the grandpa moves on.
They retire, they disappear. I never talked to them again because they were dead. And a few months later I got a new partner and we saw some more fucked up shit.
My grandpa, a retired homicide detective, just told me about the first case that made him consider a different career.
Maybe I should be a knitter.
Maybe I should be a baker.
I'd bake you.
Bake me a cake.
It's my birthday.
Where's my cake? Both my grandfather and I appreciate everyone's well wishes truly more than words can express. Posting these stories has become something he gets excited to do. In his words, knowing I can finally get the word out and all this weird shit that goes on in this world, not having to worry about the department biting me in the ass, it's good. It feels good. I know I won't be kicking around much longer, but if these folks really enjoy reading about the cases, I can't think of a better way to spend the rest of my time until I punch my ticket. Make sure you tell them, thanks from the old guy with the weird stories.
Of course he likes it. All his friends are dead.
I don't have anyone to talk to anymore. I'm alone.
Will you please play backgammon with me?
No, Grandpa. I don't even know what that is.
I'll tell you about the time I walked into a room with 4 beheaded ladies.
Alright, let's play backgammon. So the very first one, the impossible one, that was, 76, 77, somewhere in there, around a year after I made detective. Anyways, I'm sitting at my desk when the sergeant comes up and whispers something to my partner. This guy, Manth. I think I told you about him before. You know what happened to him. So they all killed themselves. So Sergeant whispers to Manth and heads back to his office, and Manth just kind of hangs his head a bit.
He just whispers, hey, you should fucking kill yourself. Fucking do it, pussy. Do it, fucking do it, pussy. Fucking do it, pussy. Do it, pussy.
I ask him what he's going on, and he stands up and tells me to follow him. We go to the car and on our way to wherever we're going, and he gives me a little speech, and I'm paraphrasing here. I've been a detective 11 years now, Steve. I've solved a lot of cases. I'm not the best detective there's ever been, but I'm damn good at my job, god damn it. Generally speaking, if there's a murder, I'll get the guy, or gal. One time it even ended up being a dog. You dirty dog. But you get what I mean.
I heard that was like the weirdest ambulance run my partner ever had. They got a call over in Makunji, and it was just a woman that was just dead on the ground, and her fucking pit bull just ate the fuck out of her alive.
Yeah.
So that's fun. That's
You
a fun
always
one.
hear about that.
Yeah.
That cats go for the eyes.
Dogs just go right for the face.
Dogs go right for the face. Even the small ones. Even like little chows and like chihuahuas and shit, like they go right for the face.
Maybe that's where they like try and wake you up first, and then they realize, oh,
They go,
you gone. Tastes like salt.
you taste like meat. But sometimes, he says, sometimes there's cases you can't solve, no matter how good you are. Sometimes things just won't make a lick of sense. The clues will take you to a dead end. The evidence will just raise more questions.
Who framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh, it's Judge Doom.
Oh, never mind. I guess we know.
You know when you do a puzzle sometimes, you'll have the box there so you can see what you're supposed to be putting together? It's like you're doing a puzzle. You know what it should look like. You got all the pieces on the table in front of you, but they just don't go together. There's no reason why, they just don't. The department doesn't like word of these getting out. You're not under any obligation to not talk about them. Don't think I'm trying to scare you or anything. I'm trying to scare you. They prefer to keep them quiet. That's probably supposed to be a but. Don't want to scare the people, you know. We got a name for them around the department. Just a dumb little name. We call them the Impossible Ones. 'Cause that's what they are. No two ways about it. They're impossible. You might have heard someone mention them before. I had. I heard the term impossible one in passing, never really knew what it was about. So Steve says, we're headed to one now. I knew it was just a matter of time until we caught one. Sarge got the details from the one of the unis down there.
Call me, beat me, if you want to reach me, if you want to page me, it's okay.
We drove out to the Oak Creek, you know, the farmland out there. We'd drive down this long dirt road between two giant plots of corn stalks, and finally, this house comes into view. Got the black and whites parked all around it, yellow taped, the whole deal. We pulled up and the lieutenant was there, which, I wasn't used to that. Manth tells me whenever we get a weird one, they send out a higher up. Lieutenant just shakes his head and tells us good luck. So, we walk past the tape. Everybody's out there doing their jobs. There's a group crowded around the big flagpole they have. We're walking up to the house to talk to the responding officers, and I heard some folks talking about how it just doesn't make sense, How is this possible? Stuff like that. So right away, I'm getting that something is off, but I still don't know why we're even there. We get into the house, a few unis standing in the foyer. This house, it wasn't a nice place. There were no walls no drywall. It was just slats. Like someone had just started building the house, but had given up halfway through. We go up and we ask for a rundown of what's happened, and two of the officers tell us to follow them upstairs. One of the unis says, I've been on the job about 2 years. I've been some messed up things, but this has got to be the worst. They take us up to the bedroom on the second floor, and before we turn to go in, the uni says, brace yourself. I don't remember what I was expecting exactly. Probably a whole lot of blood, Gus. Something like that. But there wasn't any. There was no mess. The room was absolutely immaculate. Like they'd gone over it with a toothbrush just before we walked in. The bedroom was empty except for a small, almost like a TV tray, that stands up. Yeah, there's one of those, and there's medical supplies on it, bandages, wraps, scalpels, scissors, sutures, all of them clean as a whistle. But the body. There was a body on the floor, sort of halfway leaning against the wall. The feet had been sewn on. They were much paler than the rest of the body, like feet clearly came from another person. Again, there was no blood, but at the same time, there was evidence that this operation, if you want to call it that, happened in this room. Weirder yet, one of the hands had also been stitched on, but just one of them. This body's right hand. It had belonged to its original owner. It had a stitching needle and thread in it, like the son of a bitch had been doing it to himself. Probably was his feet and hand. The ones that actually belonged to him were nowhere to be found. And as you know, as freaky as this was, it was the smell that was the worst. It was the most rank, putrid, dead body smell I've ever encountered, and I've smelled quite a few. Got a big old sniff. Now, later they did an autopsy. The cause of death couldn't be determined, but the level of decomp on the outside was, hours by the time Manth and I showed up on scene. I don't remember what the call was or, how it was found out that there was a potential murder there, but when we showed up, the body was still fresh. They did the autopsy not long after that, and the decomp on the inside of the body, his organs and all that, it was at least a month. Like he'd been sitting against that wall for a month. Now, I don't know how much you know about the human decomp, hopefully not that much, but if it happens in stages. Right after a person dies, first few days, not too much happens, then they'll start bloating and stuff, and after about a week, the skin will start to turn black, and like I said, none of this had happened yet, but on the inside, a little after a week, things will start breaking down. Maggots, bugs, insects, all that. They'll start laying eggs, feeding on the organs, and the organs, they'll start breaking down, and they'll leak out of the body, and it sounds gross. I know. But so the outside of the body was fine, but as far as decomposition goes, but the inside of the body was just, I don't know how to put it, it was just flakes, like dried fruit. His lungs, spleen, kidneys, bladder, stomach, it was all decomposed, covered in creepy crawlers. It didn't make any sense. It was, drum roll, impossible. And even more than that, you know how I said the room was perfectly clean, not a drop of blood? It was because the body had been completely exsanguinated. I mean, completely. The body shouldn't have looked the way it did on the outside, considering that what had happened on the inside. If I wouldn't have seen it with my own eyes, I would have sworn to you it was You know, like a wax statue or something. Jeepers creepers, where'd you get them papers? But that's not the weirdest thing. Not to me, at least. So, outside when we pulled up, there was this crowd of unis gathered around the flagpole. And when we were done...
There's a wax statue of The Rock, but he wasn't dark-skinned.
Yeah, it wasn't black
just
enough.
white.
Yeah, the White Rock. You know, looking around the inside of the house trying to make heads or tails of what happened, the folks that brought us into the house told us to follow them out. And when we get to the flagpole, and this thing is big, must have been 25, 35 feet tall. It's as big as the kind that you'd see at a school.
The Perkins-style flag.
Hell yeah, gotta let you know where to get them pancakes. We walk up and kind of get everyone to clear a path for us so we can see where the commotion was about. And Manth was walking ahead of me, and I just hear him say, "Jesus fucking Christ." And I look around him and I see what everyone's looking at. There's a body at the base of the flagpole. I don't mean next to it. I don't mean near it. I mean the flagpole had gone through this man's lower sternum. Blood had pooled around the area, and by the looks of it, the man had been dead longer than a few hours. Now, after the fact, we had learned the flagpole had been on the property since the 1960s, at least on paper. It hadn't been replaced or anything since then. There were two flags at the top, an American flag and a state flag, but both of them had been blowing in the wind and they were clean. Besides the normal wear and tear a flag gets, they were both clean. And so was the flagpole. Little dirt here, little dirt there, maybe, but for a body to have been impaled by it and for it to have slid down the flagpole, both it and the flag should have been covered in blood and guts, and there was no way anyone had lifted the flagpole from the ground and dropped it on him. There's just no way. And the craziest thing about that one, the guy had died from a brain aneurysm. Before I forget, the guy at the flagpole was the owner of the property. The guy inside, sewing on new hands and feet for himself, never identified. Neither were his new extremities. It's literally the creeper in there. Trying to put himself back together. Dropped a dude inside a flagpole. Just having fun.
There's a lot of interesting, what's the word, teleportation things going on in this, in these stories.
Yeah, not the first time we've seen...
Somebody really likes Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
They love Jake Gyllenhaal.
Fucking lizard in that movie. My grandpa then said, "Well, you know the first one. Next time you come over, I'll tell you about the last one. Don't worry, though, there's still a few between them. I was also considering putting a call out to some colleagues, the ones that haven't killed themselves. I'm sure there's cases in other states and departments that I've even never heard of."
All right, now we got on the line Billy. Oh, nope. Billy killed himself 5 minutes ago, so...
He heard it was me calling, and he said, "Oh, it's my time to go."
I'm out. Let me check out early.
Here's the thing. I like these stories. I do. I like the idea of someone, Jeepers Creepers style, stitching new body parts onto themselves.
But there's no payoff.
It's not the part that I have a problem with. The part that I have a problem with is like the flagpole shit, where it's just like...
Out of left field.
Why?
Just gotta creep you out some more.
We have this really cool story of a guy Frankensteining himself, and you just gotta throw in, by the way, flagpole guy.
Yeah, and he died from a brain aneurysm, so it's fucking weird.
So it's fucking weird. So his head was fine, by the way.
The flag, totally clean, you know?
Butthole, immaculate. But, like...
That's the way I want to go.
I don't know, like... There was a... when was this? It was yesterday, I think. I saw an article that said, I believe in India, they finally pulled it off. A man who had lost his arms in an accident several years ago.
Oh, he got new ones?
Was given new
I saw that
arms.
too. It's gonna take a lot of fucking PT to start having like strength in those, but that's really fucking cool.
Apparently he's already lifting like cups and apples and glasses and
God
shit.
damn.
Yeah.
Was this like fresh arms or something?
So
like,
apparently a dude died and was up for organ transplant, and they took his arms.
it's fucking
Now
crazy.
let me ask you: you try beating your meat with new hands? Is that gay?
I'm feeling it in the afterlife. Somebody's using my hand.
Is that phantom?
My strong
Is that
hand.
phantom gay limb?
Ain't nothing gay about getting your dick sucked.
I got news for you.
Just looking at
You're
you.
gay. Anyway, my grandpa.
grandpire.
Grandpire. Oh my god, how's that never been used?
The grandpire.
A grandpa vampire?
Oh, we're making it.
The grandpire. My grandpa, a retired homicide detective, just told me about the only serial killer, Helen Keller, he ever pursued.
Just love me Lucky Charms.
God. Could you imagine Helen Keller trying to find your Lucky Charms? It would probably be like, bumping into walls and shit.
I love the conspiracy theories that Helen Keller didn't actually exist. Because all these stories are just fucking batshit insane, and people are like, nah, she didn't actually
She
exist.
learned how to read and write on her own. It's like she couldn't hear you or see anything. How are you so sure? Oh, that's wild.
Alright, let's get into
The
this.
human condition.
As always, my grandpire and I
Grandpire.
we read the comments on these posts together. He absolutely loves hearing what you have to say. He loves your theories about Helen Keller. He very much appreciates your well wishes, but he rebuffs the claims that he is an exceptionally brave man worthy of commendation.
He just hasn't killed himself yet.
I just did my damn job. I just did what the job required. The brave ones are the ones who were more affected by the impossible ones. The ones that killed themselves.
What's the kill? He's trying to say that they're braver? They're braver because they gave up.
Those guys and gals who are still around today, even though the cases took a part of them. Alright, so the ones that didn't kill themselves. Great. A bigger part than they ever took from me. They're the ones who should be getting the praise. The partners I had over the years who were never the same after one of those cases hit our desks, tell them I appreciate it. But they would all do the same things I did in those situations. For whatever reason, I was just lucky enough to not be in the direct line of fire when a case like those took one of us down with them. Just luck. That's all. Alright, I got one for you. My whole career, I only ever dealt with one serial killer. You know, not that we're hoping there'd be a serial killer on the loose, of course not, it's just those are the cases that make careers. This was about 2 years before I was planning to retire, so what, 99, 2000? Somewhere around there. If I could bag a serial killer, it would be the cherry on the top of my whole career. I should have known right from the jump that it was going to be an impossible case. But, well, I don't know. Hope in the benefit of hindsight, I suppose. In the department, just amongst ourselves, we called this sick son of a bitch the backwards man.
Backwards man to backwards man. Backwards man to backwards man.
The only way-
Backwards hands backwards man.
The only way to catch a backwards man is to go backwards.
Oh, fuck.
Ah, hey now. We've never claimed to be creative types. We called him that because we caught him on camera a few times. A bunch of times, actually. He approached his victims, but he'd walk up to them backwards. He'd stand with his back to them, and he'd talk to them. He always wore the same thing, a long black coat with a big hood pulled up over his head. Winter, summer, didn't matter. Always wore the same thing. Always walked backwards. Now, if you're walking down the street and you see somebody walking backwards to you, what you gonna do? You gonna get out of the way of that weird sumbitch, aren't you? Right? Not this guy. He'd walk up to those people and they'd stop, they'd talk to him, talk to the back of his head. After they talk for a bit, 20, 30 seconds, he'd take off in the opposite direction, and they'd follow him.
Is this the myth of the dude with the other face on the backside of his head?
It's just fucking malignant.
It's not Malignant. It's Malignant.
Oh,
it's
I know
based
what
off
you're
an actual
talking about.
carny.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Carny with face.
Wasn't he in
on
American
back.
Horror Story too?
Yes, of head.
Yeah.
Edward Mordrake.
Yeah.
Edward Mordrake was apparently an anomaly where a guy had a head on the back of his head, or a face on the back of his head, as well as the front of his head.
Why are all the pictures of him at a desk? Yeah, that looks like
There's
him.
your... Look at that. Look at that.
It would tell him to do. It would tell him to do terrible things, like jerk off.
Like throw a chair across a police station to hit that one guy who was trying to leave.
Oh, come on! What the heck?
But yeah, Edward Mordrake. That always creeps me out. That whole Voldemort aspect of the first Harry Potter book. Yeah.
Anyway, we tried following him on the cameras, and this is where it gets real weird. Downtown, you know, they have all kinds of cameras on the streets. There was one, middle of the day, he took someone. We got the footage from 6 different cameras. He walked up to this guy talked to the back of his head for a minute, and they start walking. Now you're thinking that if he walks up to them backwards, then starts going on in the other direction without turning around, he's just walking normally, right? Well, on all of the cameras, his back was to it. Camera was facing east on the Juno, his back was to it. Camera was facing west on Juno, his back was to it, walking backwards. Camera was facing north on Water Street, his back was to the camera. Sounds like it doesn't make sense, right? If he was walking east on Juno, and you're looking at him from the south, you'd be looking at his profile, right? Nah, sir. His back was to the camera. He was always walking sideways, crossing his feet one over the other. Didn't make a single shred of sense. All the cameras had the same timestamps, but we were watching this guy walk in distinctly different gates at the same time. Once they turned enough corners, they just disappear. We'd always check the nearby buildings, but there would never be any evidence of them having been there. We would eventually find the victims, but I'll get to that. Anyways, because of the whole camera thing, we obviously never saw his face, not once. Chased this guy for 2 years. Interviewed, hundreds of folks who were in the area this son of a bitch would take as victims. They'd all said the same things. I only saw his back. His back was always to me. I just thought he was a weird guy walking backwards down the street. No one we ever talked to saw his face. Except for one lady. We'd seen some unis out canvassing after the backwards man had taken a 13-year-old girl with him in the 3rd Ward. They went door to door to a few apartment buildings, and there was one lady, she was in her 40s, name was, what was it, Catherine something? I don't remember. So about a week after this girl had gone missing, we go to meet this woman, this Catherine, and it's hard to describe, but it was like she was ripped off the page of one magazine and pasted onto the other. Her apartment was immaculate. The 3rd World isn't cheap to live. You know that. She had big fancy bookcases, big TV, pristine furniture. She was a lawyer. Judging by the apartment and the pictures she happened to be in that were around her house, she was a real professional type. But the woman herself, she'd seen better days. In those pictures, she was an attractive woman. She was dressed sharp, hair was nice, big, sparkly white smile. When we talked to her, she looked like she hadn't seen a shower in a few weeks. Her hair was all messed up, her teeth were dirty, she was a mess. And she was afraid. She sat in a chair in the corner and watched the door while we talked. She was shaking like a leaf. We sat down to talk to her, asked her what she'd seen. Her voice was all shaky, and she whispered like there was someone in the room she didn't want to hear what she was saying. Now, I'm paraphrasing here, but he walked up backwards to the girl. I watched him do it. He walked backwards to her and just stood there. I wasn't too close to them. She was stuttering. You could tell she was terrified. She goes, but I could see the girl talking to the person. I was walking back to my office.
And I walked a bit closer, and as I walked by, I threw my coffee in the trash beside them, and he was just saying something over and over and over. The same thing. And she was talking to him like they were having a conversation. I asked her what he was saying, and she just starts hyperventilating, freaking out. It takes us a good 10 minutes to calm her down. But we need to know, We have to know what this guy was saying. She goes, he was saying, is a house really a home if you aren't there? And he'd sniffle a little bit, like he was sick. Then, is a house really a home if you aren't there? And another sniffle. Is a house really a home if you aren't there? And a sniffle. And then she started crying really hard. I had to give her a minute to calm her down again. And then she says, and I realized that it was a perfect copy every time. Like it was on repeat on a recorder or something. It did something to me, hearing that. I thought I was going to drop dead right there. I don't know what it was, but I thought I was going to die. Then I asked what the girl was saying. She was hearing something different than I was. She was just going on. Oh yeah, me too. I love it here. Oh yeah, what about you? That's great. It didn't make any sense. Then I kind of got down close next to her, as comforting as I could be, and I asked her again, did she see his face? Her eyes well up with tears again. Her hands start shaking. I can tell she's just about to break down again. Then she whispers, his face. His face. His face. Then she starts yelling, his face! His face! We try to calm her down, but then she just stops, goes dead silent for a second, stares off into nothingness. Then it's like she's composed herself in the blink of an eye, and she goes, oh, excuse me, I need to use the restroom. Before I tell her to go, I ask her again if she can tell me what the guy's face looked like. She's cool as a cucumber now, and she just says, if you give me a moment, I'll collect myself and be right back with you. I'm very sorry, I just need to calm down for a second. I didn't really know what else to say. I mean, her change in demeanor was jarring. Kind of left me and my partner stunned. I could tell her no, It was her house. She had every right to get up and go, and she did. My partner and I just kind of stood there and talked for a minute, kind of going over what the lady had said. When she'd gone to the bathroom and closed the door, we'd walk over nearby just to keep an eye on her. She seemed unstable, but not to the point that we thought she'd try to harm herself. As I'm telling you this, I realize what it must sound like this woman was on the edge, and we just let her go to the bathroom, but she was afraid, and it just seemed like shock. In that line of work, you have to be able to read people. Well, we were reading her, and neither of us felt like she was at risk. The water had been running, and we heard a creak, like she'd sat down on the top of the toilet or leaned against the counter or something, but that was it. No crying. Didn't sound like she was moving around at all. I knocked on the door, and we didn't get a response. Knocked again, but in a hurry, and when she didn't answer, I tried to open the door, but she'd locked it, so I busted the handle. She'd taken the blades out of one of those single-use razors. There were 2 blades. I know what you're thinking. She tried to slash her wrist, right? Wrong. She cut out her tongue. There's blood everywhere, all over the sink, the floor, the mirror, on top of the toilet. The tongue itself was sitting on the counter next to the sink, right next to the cup that had her toothbrush in it. Catherine. I think her name was Catherine. That's going to drive me crazy. But she was sitting on the edge of the bathtub, totally silent, still as calm as she had been when she'd gotten up to go up in there. Every few seconds, she'd spit out a mouthful of blood into the tub. It was horrifying. My partner called for medical, and I did what I could to help plug up the bleeding, which wasn't much. Oh, and on the shower wall, she'd written in her own blood the words, his face, which I didn't know what that was supposed to mean. Still today, don't know what it meant. It wasn't an indicator of what it had looked like or anything, just, I don't know. She ended up in the hospital, of course, then was remanded to a psych facility for a few days. I remember my partner at the time, he looked her up a few years after I was out, and she was living with her sister. And by that time, she'd been arrested twice for heroin possession. Okay, out of left field. Her life really fell apart after that. That, my grandfather was thinking for a moment, had a look of remorse on his face. So, anyways, so that was odd enough. The whole thing with the guy walking backwards, whatever his face looked like. the weird things he was saying, but that wasn't it. So he'd take these people, we'd follow them on camera when we could, but eventually we'd lose them. Sometimes the victims, they'd be missing for days, sometimes weeks. The longest any of them went missing was a guy about your age, around 30. He was missing for about 6 weeks, but they'd always turn up, and they'd always turn up in the same way. There'd be a call placed to 911, and the call would always essentially sound the same. We just got home and there's a dead body in our house. So there were 7 of these murders, that we know about. 3 had already happened by the time I got put on the case. The lead before me hit his 20 and left the force. So I dealt with 4 of these. The girl from the 3rd ward, she'd been missing for, 2 days shy of a month. Towards the end of August, she showed up like all the others did. They were always in surrounding areas, never anywhere near where they'd gone missing. This poor couple, the wife had come home from work about 2 minutes before her husband, and she walked in the house to find this 13-year-old girl's body propped up in a reclining chair in her living room.
Yeesh.
This girl's body, she'd been frozen, and when the unis got there, maybe 10 minutes after the call was made, she was still ice cold to the touch, like she'd just been dropped there right before the wife had gotten in. Had just barely started thawing. Her skin was black, like she had the worst kind of frostbite over every inch of her body. There was dried blood coming from her nose, ears, eyes. You could barely see it, but it was there. She'd been posed. She had one leg over the other, and she had one hand held up. And the son of a bitch had put an empty champagne glass in it. But the worst part, her face. She was a pretty girl, or she had been. But, her face was solid black. But she was, shit. She was smiling, lips curled up, toasting like she was celebrating something. That was the worst part about it, to me at least. The other ones they were different, but equally as twisted. One of them was the guy I mentioned earlier, on Juno. He was found at the house in Brookfield, burnt to a crisp. And he was still smoldering, too, like he'd just been put there the second before the people got home. He was posed, too. He was in their rec room, and he'd been set up like he was tossing a dart at their dart bird. And then one day, they just stopped. It just never happened again. The only thing related to the backwards man that happened after that murder was, I shouldn't say the only thing. I don't want to diminish it. It was very unfortunate what happened. I should say that the last thing related to the backwards man that I dealt with, and as far as I know the last thing that happened with him in our city, was this poor girl. She was in her mid-20s, going to graduate school. She had just had a baby maybe 6 months before, and she'd been walking from the local college campus to the parking garage. Somewhere between those two, he'd shown up. The whole thing was caught on security cameras, and again, no matter the angle, his back was always to the camera.
Backwards man, backwards man.
They talked for a minute, and this time he turned around. He faced her. We couldn't see it because, whatever the hell happens with the cameras. They talked for just a second after that, but instead of her following him, he just left. Just walked away. See you.
See you later.
See you. She stood there for about 10 minutes, still as a statue, just looking into the distance. Kind of a 1,000-yard stare. She eventually went back to her car, stopped at the store, picked up diapers, started cooking dinner for her husband and son. While whatever they were having for dinner was cooking, she sat down at the kitchen table, wrote something down on a piece of paper, folded it over once, and set it down on one of those end tables next to their couch. Then she went into her closet and hung herself from one of the bars. Her husband had been playing with their son, hadn't noticed her put the piece of paper down. The smoke alarm went off, and he went looking for her. Found her in the closet. The note just said, his face, as many times as she could fit on the piece of paper. My grandpa was drained after this one. Reading these transcripts is one thing, but then I sit down with him and he tells me these verbally for me to record and transcribe. It's apparent how all these cases affected him emotionally. And keep in mind, these were just the impossible ones. Besides those, he still has nearly 3 decades worth of normal explainable cases weighing on him. My grandpa then said something despite his clear exhaustion from the memory of this one. And even after my insistence that he is under no obligation to share any of this with me, if he doesn't want to. Let's make that call. Get you in line with my pal in Arizona. I know he's got a story or two that'll really kick your ass.
So now we're going the ways of search and rescue stories where we start pulling in other people with other stories. Looks like we have 2 left. 2 left.
They're gonna really kick our ass. That backwards, man. Always be backwards.
Yeah, I wanna Google search something real quick. Backwards, man.
Tom Green.
Here it comes. I can go back as fast as you can. I can go back as fast as you can. Backwards, man, backwards, man, backwards, man, backwards, man.
This is why Freddy got fingered.
Where's your LeBaron, Freddy?
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages? My grandpa's friend, quote unquote, a retired homicide detective, just told us what goes on in the Arizona desert.
Anal.
Alright, that was that one.
Enchiladas.
After my grandpa told me about the last case, the one about the backwards man to backwards man and backwards man to backwards can, I can go fast as you can. I can go back as fast as you can. He told me to make tentatively planned Skype call to a colleague of his in Arizona. Connectivity issues on both sides didn't allow us to have the call when we had initially planned it, and schedules then got in the way after that.
Man, we're using
That
Skype.
said, we all eventually found the time, got the call connected, and my grandpa and I were soon talking to a detective in Arizona named Adam, a man my grandpa had met at a conference years prior. Little small talk was made. My grandpa quickly got to the point. I know we talked about it a little, about those cases, the kinds that, don't make any sense. Ah, yeah. What do you guys call them? Impossible cases? Yeah, the impossible ones. That's right. That's right. Down here they call them the inconceivables. What the fuck? Inconceivable! Like that movie, my grandpa joked. They laughed for a moment, during which time Adam said they did indeed get the name from the Princess Bride, and then he went into his very own impossible cases. There's a lot of desert down here. A lot of long, empty roads with nothing but open land on either side. A few skinny trees here and there, some cacti, but no real structures or anything to speak of. I got called out to a crime scene and shit, had to be around 2002. It was right after 9/11, I remember. Not that one has anything to do with the other. Anyhow, I drive out there and this is the middle of nowhere, like I had to drive 20 minutes off the road just to get to the middle of nowhere. In the middle of the night when I got there, 2, 3 in the morning, so they had these big floodlights set up outside of the tape, and the tape was set up way further out than what I had initially thought was necessary, real wide around the focal point of why I'd been called out, but I'll get to that. There was a few little pathways that we can talk to get to her, and I was led in by one of the officers. Standing there in the middle of this big-ass area was a woman, looked about 30. She was standing mid-stride like she was walking through the desert, and 1 second she just, boom, died. Her foot was pointed up like she'd taken a step, and she'd just frozen. The techs were out there trying to figure out exactly where she'd come from. That was one of the weirdest things, the footprints. So leading up to where this woman was, there were no footprints. Ground didn't have any imprints whatsoever, not the slightest, not leading up to where she was standing. It was like she just floated down right out of the sky. But around her, maybe 15 yards or so, there were these, I don't want to call them prints because they weren't, but they were tracks. I don't know what to call them. They were like something had been shuffling around, something big. I mean, they looked like they'd stepped lightly, but when they were pointed out to me, I could plainly see that they'd left depressions in the ground. But they weren't shaped or structured like footprints. They were these weird kind of collections, I guess you'd say, of spirals. Spirals, groups of 5 or 6 of them, different sizes and angles, where if you drew a line around them, it would look, I guess, maybe like a rhombus. I remember there were 4 separate collections of these, so 20, 25 different size spirals, some circular, some triangular, some square-shaped, 20 to 25 total.
Chris Rock's there, just like, come see my Saw movie.
I was going to say, True Detective's down there saying, we love spirals. If you drew a line around the collection of rhombuses, rhombi, if you drew a line around those, it made almost a perfect rectangle. There's no real way to put it into words. And I know this is for the blog or whatever Steve said you two were doing with these. Where was I? Shit. Okay, so I was in the desert. It was cold, maybe 40 degrees, give or take, but part of the girl's skin was frostbitten. It would have been her whole body. I might have thought she'd been walking naked through the Arctic after getting out of the swimming pool filled with ice water, you know, like a dark purple, a black color. But there were just all these patches all over her, big sections of her thigh, the top of her knuckles, the side of her neck, her shoulder blade, like all these spots had just been dipped in sub-zero temperatures or something, but just those parts, I don't know. Oh, the tracks, that's what I was talking about before. So, like I said, they were made a big circle, about 15, maybe closer to 20 yards out from her. Each one had rectangles, the ones with 4 rhombuses in them. They must have been 12, 15 feet apiece, maybe 6 feet wide. Fucking huge, these things. I know you might be thinking it sounded like someone drew them, but the text said the depression pattern in the ground indicated that the symbols were most depressed on the ends, not so much in the middle, like someone stepping heel to toe. Obviously, someone could have done this on purpose, but why? They went in a circle around the woman, and then they overlapped each other a whole lot, like someone was just doing laps. I suppose it's worth mentioning, we didn't realize all the spirals and the shapes and everything right away. It took a few days before the text put it together. I mean, the shapes were apparent right away, but I mean, the patterns and all that. When you first look at it, it just looked like a bunch of nonsense scribbled with no rhyme or reason to it. The craziest thing about the tracks, maybe 200 yards away, there was another big circle of them, same circumference, but they just made one circle, no laps. And the depression on that one was deep, like it had stomped down about 200 yards after the other one. Depression even deeper, and that was it. They said it was like whatever had left it had dropped out of the sky, landed, boom, then jumped. Boom, another one, and jumped again, and landed lightly on the last one, then circled this woman. No idea what it could have been, obviously. Usually with the weird ones, some people speculate, not with those, though. No one could come up with any kind of explanation. Back to the girl. She didn't have an ID on her, no wallet, purse, nothing. She was wearing a tank top and shorts. How I said she was frostbitten, while her face wasn't at all. It was as dry as I'd ever seen any face in my life. Her lips were cracked all to shit. Skin was sunburnt, flaky. And that's why when the ME, the medical examiner, told us her cause of death was drowning, we couldn't believe it. By all accounts, drowning should have been the last possible cause of death, but the ME said she would stake her whole career on that any subsequent analysis of the autopsy results by any other MEs would yield the same results.
Sounds like a person double downing on bullshit.
And it wasn't a dry drowning, it was like she'd been held underwater until she died. Her stomach contents, I remember, there was water, of course, but there was also blades of grass. So initially this was maybe she was starving, tried eating some grass, yeah. It was sod, fake grass. There wasn't a whole lot in there either, you know. She didn't have a whole front lawn in her stomach, but there was enough that she could cover maybe the bottom of a water bottle with the grass standing up, you know what I mean? Oh, even more fucked up, get this, she'd put the time of death as being about 8 hours after I'd shown up in the desert. No kidding. She'd apparently been alive the whole time. I was skulking around, checking it all out. I'd been right up close to her, inches away, and I don't see her chest moving, I don't feel any breath coming out of her, nothing. Didn't make a shred of sense. And that was just the time she recorded. She said there were multiple factors that contradicted one another. How I said she was standing, rigor mortis has somehow set in instantly. The medical examiner said it was impossible. That's what it was. Despite the rigor mortis being an indicator of time of death, her stomach contents made the ME think it hadn't been that long. Same with the fact that no insects had other little creepy crawlers were anywhere near her. But then there was the fact that a few of her organs were deteriorated like she had been dead for days. It was just... I still can't wrap my mind around it. Alright, anyways, we had to find out who this woman was. We started looking at recent missing persons, far back as 6 months, didn't turn up anything. Checked with the surrounding states, nothing. Her fingerprints, well, that wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. She had 2 sets of fingerprints on each finger.
What?
And that's a bad way to put that. On each finger, she had half of one fingerprint on the left, and the half of the other fingerprint on the right. The lines just didn't connect like they should have. Again, it would be easier to show you what I mean, but you can't really show what I mean through the written word. But it was bizarre. We had a specialist come to try to reconstruct the prints, but nothing came out of it. Then, about maybe 3 months after she was found out there, a call was placed to 911. Word for word, a man's voice said, "The woman in the desert, Amber Lee," and hung up. The call was placed from a payphone outside a convenience store in Massachusetts, one that had been out of service for 2 years. Never mind the fact that the phone didn't even work. But how the hell did someone dial 911 and get connected to a dispatch across the country? We called over to Massachusetts State Police, sent them over to the woman's picture, had them go through their database, missing persons, all that. There was nothing about her there. And there was a woman with the same name, Amber Lee, that lived in a suburb outside of Cambridge, but she was alive and well. For now. We never found out who Amber Lee was or how she wound up in the desert, and you know, that's tragic. The woman, whoever she was, she might have had family, people who loved her. Even if not, she deserved better than what happened to her, but as far as tragic and as what happened to her is, that's not what fucks with me. What fucks with me is the fact that that's something out in the desert. Something that even if we knew what it was and how to find it, I don't think we'd be even halfway equipped to deal with it. After he was done telling the story, he offered to put us in touch with both his son, current Arizona homicide detective, and a colleague out in Colorado, who he knows has seen some crazy stories. So hopefully we'll hear from them soon. After we hung up, he called back about 2 minutes later. Tell your friends on the blog that there's not much of a story to this one, just something that happened that we never figured out, never had a single clue on, never found out who it was, who did it, how it was done, nothing. There's about 100 things wrong with this one, but it'll be funny to make them scratch their heads trying to figure it out, because it really just doesn't even sound possible, logistically or otherwise. Some folks were bowling, and right in the middle of a game, this little girl throws her ball, then she's standing at the return waiting for her ball to come back, and out comes a human head, male, maybe 40 years old. Take care, boys.
Where the fuck did that story come from at the
That's a good little stinger for you. Just I thought that you would like this one. Because, you know, the ball return slots also exist in the back of the bowling alley. So it just means someone could have chopped a head off and just threw it in there, you know?
I almost forgot.
Here's a little doozy.
It's a fun one.
Here's a little one to kiss you goodnight. Anyway, last one. My grandpa.
Oh, Grampy's about to die. Told me about one last case before he passed.
My grandpa, a retired homicide detective vampire,
Take a stake in the heart.
told me about one last case before he passed.
What if, like, we make a Grampire movie, but they just hate Texas Roadhouse because of
The
the
more
steak?
I'm thinking about it, the more I think Jeepers Creepers is the story of the grandpire. Because he's old.
That makes sense. And he also touches 12-year-olds.
Oh, no. We have to go back.
We have to go back.
Marty, your daughter, she's gonna marry a black man.
What?
What's wrong with that?
Doc, what the fuck?
I mean, no, it's cool, right?
You might not be ready for this, Doc, but your kids are gonna love it. Hey, everyone. Very sorry for the extended absence.
I'm sorry to inform you all that my grandfather passed on December 30th, 2019. On Christmas night, after a fantastic, lively day with his entire family, his health took a drastic downturn.
And a bullet to the brain.
He passed while we were all over at he and my grandma's house, where he put a bullet in his head.
God damn it.
No, he was preparing for New Year's Eve. I know he was happy to go with all of us around. It's what he always said he wanted.
I want you to be there when I die, son. I want you to see it happen. I want you to be the one who puts me in the ground.
To see my cold, dead, lifeless body, and I need you to piss on it.
I want you to see the moment the spirit leaves me.
Nope, not dead yet.
That's what we all wish
It's
for.
coming. You keep watching. Let me also say that the time my grandpa and I spent over the last few months sharing his stories here on Our No Sleep, interacting with everyone, I can't overstate how happy this all made him. You helped me make some very difficult months just that much easier for a sick man, and my grandpa appreciated each and every one of you. So, we did speak with a detective in Colorado about a couple unusual experiences in a cabin in the blizzardous mountains of Pikes Peak. But I thought it might be more appropriate to share with you the final case my grandpa himself regaled to me. After the last weeks of pre- and post-funeral goings-on, I finally transcribed the case he told me about on the 24th of December. I had a good career, you know. These weird cases were few and far between, and when I wasn't chasing my tail looking for clues...
Chasing some tail, looking for clues.
That wouldn't lead anywhere, even if I found them.
Oh, I got a raging clue.
I feel like I really made a difference. Scary as hell sometimes, yeah, but I wouldn't change a thing. Your grandmother, I don't know, I don't want to scare you. I've been putting this off since I started telling you about these damn cases, but she had a dump truck.
I thought you'd want to know.
All right, well, God, this one hits home.
My grandpa was a very apprehensive man about sharing this particular case, more so than any others. When he said he didn't want to scare me, I suggested that with everything he'd already told me, the chances of that were very slim, and even still, he was particularly worried that the contents of this would affect me. Nevertheless, I assured my grandfather I would be fine, and he begrudgingly continued.
All right, well, I'll talk to you about your grandma's ass, all right?
Dump truck of an ass.
This one's gonna hit home. So by the time I made detective, I've been with your grandma a long time. In 1981, maybe 80, I don't remember my anniversary. I'm a piece of shit. One of the two, my partner and I, caught one. Now, this wasn't immediately apparent as being an impossible one. There were little hints of odd things, but...
I could tell my grandpa was questioning whether or not to continue telling me about the case.
He's super British now. So the case was a double homicide at a real nice apartment building downtown. You know, a high-rise, overlooking the lake, all that. Now, the apartment belonged to a man and his wife. I remember the man's name was Scott. Scott something. Scott was one of the two victims. He'd been, I don't want to be... gratuitous. Your folks on the website don't need to hear all the nasty business. What? What are you talking about? You've told them everything.
Give me the deets.
But okay, picture someone laying down on their back,
Okay.
arms at their sides, starting at the tip of his right shoulder and going diagonally downwards to the bottom left of his elbow. He'd been cut.
Okay.
I don't mean someone had slashed him with a knife. I mean, God, he'd been cut clean through. Like someone took a giant old axe and hit him at that angle.
Yeah.
He'd been cut there, and then from his right hip to just above his left knee, and then again from his right knee to his left ankle. The cuts were so clean that we didn't realize at first he'd been vivisected. We were wearing a suit and tie, and the cuts were so clean that he just looked like a normal dead body in a pool of blood. You can imagine our surprise when the coroners went to move the body, and he fell into a whole bunch of pieces. Shit, that's so fucking Looney Toony. So, yeah, there was another body. Scott was married, but the body wasn't his wife's. It was, this old lady. Must have been in her 90s. Nothing was done to her. She was determined to have died from natural causes. We initially thought maybe the wife had been abducted, and, you know, of course, we had to look at her for the death of her husband. But this old lady, She's been reported missing from a nursing home the day before. A nursing home in, where was it? Sunrise, Florida. We spoke to the staff over the phone, and there was one nurse there. She just walked this woman back to her room and given her medications. She was supposed to mark down on a form when she'd last taken her meds, but she left her pen in the common area just outside the room. She stepped out for 5 seconds, as she put it, and when she stepped back in, lady was gone. Vanished into thin air.
Hashtag teleport.
All the fucking time. This one nursing home in the Lehigh Valley, a granny ended up dead in the bushes near Jordan Park, which is like right outside where that nursing home was. That nursing home has now changed names 8 times since that incident.
Yeah.
They've been sued a whole bunch.
Yeah.
That was at about 4 p.m. Meanwhile, at 4:15 p.m., maybe 5 minutes away from the nursing home, a woman was detained after behaving erratically, taken to a mental health facility. That woman was Scott's wife. She'd been at work that day, and towards the end of the day, she disappeared. Everyone thought she'd left the office early for the day. She didn't buy a plane ticket, bus ticket, hot air balloon ride. Her car was still in the parking garage at her office building. They just switched places, kind of. Not an exact switch, though. We don't know how the old lady ended up in Scott's and his wife's apartment. Oh, and Scott's wife? Amanda. That was her name. Amanda. She'd been picked up screaming at the top of her lungs. But after that, she went catatonic. Completely stone cold catatonic. God damn it.
God damn.
So the whole thing's strange, unexplainable, all that. You know by now how these things go. But shit. This one, though, we start going through the apartment, trying to figure out who all these people are. I mean, we know who they are. We know. But, you know, trying to figure out what might have led to this point is another story. My partner happens upon some photo albums and,
My grandpa started tearing up at this point and had to take a few moments to collect himself.
he finds some photo albums and there's pictures of us. Me and your grandma. Pictures from our wedding, from games we'd gone to, the first picture we took when we bought our first house together, even pictures from when we were kids, long before we knew each other. I'm trying to reason it out. I think maybe Scott or his wife is someone your grandma knows, or someone in the family knows, but it's only pictures of us. No one else in the family. And your grandma didn't have a clue who they were. It was all logged into evidence. We kept working the case, never figured out who killed Scott, and we never figured out how he was cut so cleanly. Doesn't even seem possible. Anyways, about a year after that, your grandmother and I are sitting at the dinner table. Your mother, too. And the phone rings. Your grandma gets up and answers it, and, fuck. You know, she says hello, and the color just drains from her face, like she saw a ghost. Then she starts bursting out in tears, just hysterical sobbing. And you know, your grandma, she's a strong woman, just the strongest. I get up and take the phone from her, and it's just a dial tone. I kept asking her, who was it? Who was it? And she just cried and cried and cried. I asked whoever it was said, and she just shook her head. She never told me that or what was said on the phone call, even to this day. She wouldn't tell me who it was either for a while. About a month after the call, it was the middle of the night. Oh, the middle of the night. And, you know, that feeling you get, like you're being watched. I remember I felt that, except I was asleep. I opened my eyes, and your grandmother was standing by my side of the bed, just staring down at me. I didn't know how long she'd been there, but I damn near pissed myself. "The hell you doing, Pat?" I asked her. She just looks at me and says, "It was Amanda on the phone." After she said that, she took those weird, choppy steps back to her side of the bed, like she was only moving one part of her body at a time to get where she was going. Her toes, then her foot, then her leg, and so on and so forth. It was goddamn...
My grandpa tears up again.
It was goddamn horrifying. I didn't go back to sleep that night. The next morning, when your grandma woke up, she said she had no memory of it happening. When I asked her if the person who called her a month earlier had been named Amanda, she got real worked up. She didn't even want to talk about it. And then she She got sick, physically sick, ran to the bathroom, threw on up. Then that night, I woke up again in the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night,
I go to my grandma.
I go to my grandma.
Was she out of bed?
Yes, out of bed,
The light in the hall was on.
thrown up in the bathroom.
And the stairs to the attic. Well, they were down. I went up there, and the grandma, well, she was sleeping on the floor of the attic with the guy from Bagul.
Sister, I
Yeah,
see you, Bagul.
I went up there, and your grandma, she was sleeping on the floor of the attic, and it looked like she'd gone through a bunch of boxes. There was a whole bunch of stuff we'd stored up there, all thrown around, and she was sleeping next to some photo albums. Most of them were our old ones, but there was one, and it was pictures of Scott and Amanda from their wedding day, from when they were kids. There was no reason we should have had that. And the album was in with a bunch of stuff we hadn't touched in years. I woke your grandma up, and she didn't remember going up there. By that point, I was obviously on to different cases, and this one was just filled in with the other impossible ones, and I didn't notice this until later years. Every year on May 12th, your grandmother gets sick. Real sick. It's gotten worse as the years gone by. Remember last year when she was in the hospital for a few days, dehydrated? It was that. May 12th was Amanda's birthday. I've gone over everything more times than I can remember. Hundreds of times, trying to find a connection. There isn't one. The closest thing to a connection between us and them that I could find was that my dad's brother, Alfred, he owned an apartment building on the east side where one of them, I think it was Scott's great aunts, had rented something really far back, and it was really meaningless. I've told you about all of these, and I know I've said that one or another was the one I could never get out of my head, the one that still, after all these years, really, really gets to me. But this is the one that I still look into every year. I call over to the precinct, and I see if they've come across anything new, and of course they never have. Your mother, she's connected to it too some way. I'll let you ask her about it, though, or your grandma, but I'll bet she's not going to want to talk about it. You can.
My grandpa went into a coughing fit and said he was done for the night. And that he didn't want to talk about the case anymore.
I don't want to do it! You can't make me do it! On December 30th, while we were still at my grandparents' house, my grandfather was quite sick, but he'd mustered up all the energy he could so as not to drag the evening down. He was always thoughtful like that. We would have been happy to spend time with him in his room if that was what was needed, but he refused. He wanted to be up and helping and talking and enjoying the night with all of us. At around 9 p.m., the phone rang. He was sitting in a chair in the kitchen, and he reached over to the desk behind him and grabbed the cordless phone. He said hello, and as soon as he did, I saw the color drain from his face. His lips started quivering, and his eyes welled up with tears. I quickly grabbed the phone from him and put it to my ear, but there was nothing. But the three tones that generally accompanied the "we're sorry, but your call cannot be completed as dialed" message, repeating over and over. I looked at my grandpa and asked if he was okay. He simply looked at me and said, "It was Amanda on the phone." And with that, my grandfather took a look around the room, sat back in his chair, and passed on to the hereafter. Oh shit. When all the funeral and will business was completed, I used the information my grandpa had given me in this case to reach out to a relative of Amanda, her sister Anne. I explained that I knew reaching out to the mental health facility she was at would have been useless, but as they couldn't and wouldn't divulge any information nor allow her to speak with me. Anne informed me that her sister had died just 4 years earlier, and despite there being several people in the house, all of whom acknowledged hearing the phone ring, the phone records showed that my grandparents' home didn't receive a call anywhere near 9 p.m. on December 30th, 2019. I think of all the impossible cases my grandpa ever worked. This is the one that truly haunted him the most. In his memory, I'm going to continue his tradition of reaching out to his old precinct every year to see if any new developments arise. For now, I know that whatever my grandpa is, or wherever my grandpa is, he's regaling anyone who will listen from the stories of the honorable life well lived.
and hoping that he could just get another partner who will kill themselves at some point.
You know, in 1984, when I had my
fuck.
partner,
Bang.
Big Dick just loved hanging himself.
Big Dick
And I was
Randy.
like, Dick, no.
Dick, no.
And
That's the first
that's
person
my
to say
story.
Dick, no.
Dick, no.
That's also what the 12-year-old kid said to Victor Salva.
Oh, Dick, no. No, Dick, no.
Oh, we have fun here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel the same way I felt about the first one, which was, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I need more of a...
Wraparound narrative.
Yeah, it's just he just threw too much shit at us every now and then. Like, we really didn't need the flagpole to pop up at the end of these different stories.
No, but
I like the Backwards Man. The Backwards Man kind of had a decent rap.
Backwards man, backwards man, backwards
Backwards
man.
Man.
I just here's my problem, right?
Your problem is Victor Salvo keeps knocking on your door. He's like, hey,
I'm of age.
Hey.
Do you feel? Oh,
I want to make Jeepers Creepers with you.
I'd maybe.
Would you creep on my Jeep?
So listen,
Baby.
here's my problem.
Baby.
Here's my problem. A longer time ago, in the bowel recessed histories of No Sleep, there exists things like search and rescue stories and like the deep sea diver stuff. And it's just like, other people have done this, and other people have done this better. So you take something that should be procedural, like a cop, and you introduce this element of, I don't fucking know, and it doesn't feel as earned, because cops have, like, paperwork and quotas, and, like, even as detectives, like, you have ongoing investigations or you give up. And it's just like, you can't actually expect me to believe that every agency on the planet has, like, a list of unknown fucked up files that never got their light of day, never got their end cap. It's easy for me to understand a diver who went on a job one day thought he saw something creepy underwater. It's easy for me to think that a bunch of campers, people who work at national forests, get together and tell the creepy stories about how they exist on their jobs. But you get into, like, cops and law enforcement and the government and all of these, like, pseudo-political entanglements, and I'm just like, there's too much bureaucracy. There's too many, like, literal lines being drawn. And it's just like, it sometimes takes, like, 30 people to actually, like, operate a crime scene. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, no one's talking about this shit? Even in the 80s, 90s, like, we've had serial killers forever. You're telling me in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, no one was leaking, like, oh yeah, this guy tried sewing his hands and feet onto a new body. Like,
that'd be in the papers.
That'd be in the papers. You know, people would be talking about it.
That'd make
no one gives a fuck
saying shit like that.
No one gives a fuck what some search and rescue park officer is doing, because no one's asking him, because he works in the middle of the woods. There's no oversight.
It's very true.
You know, the problem with doing my grandpa's a detective and he just wants to talk about some shit. The problem with that type of narrative is the fact that people would give a shit. There would be a narrative. There would be an audience. It's not. I don't know. I'm too hung up on the context to tell myself that this is plausible. Because there's, like, accidents. There's, like, there's like crazy accidents that people have gotten into that have gotten them killed, and it leaves their bodies in the weirdest fucking positions. But then, like, someone finds it and it becomes a story and it becomes a thing and people start talking about it. Like, that whole, this is actually true. A dude was, diving in a lake locally near his place on the east side. And, he's in there with, like, a full setup, tank, rebreather, and all that stuff. He's doing, whatever. Helicopter comes by because there's a fire 2 counties over. It's the closest body of water. They send in one of those water catching nets, and then they pull it up into the sky, and they pull the guy up with it, and they dropped him onto a fire, and he died.
Jesus Christ.
So, but then the fire goes out. They send people in to go make sure no one died, and they see a guy laying there in a scuba diving suit. No, not burnt up. They see a guy laying there in a scuba diver suit, and that's where you get the whole, how did the guy end up in a field in the middle of nowhere, dead, having to appear drowned.
This guy started the fire. It was him.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, in his scuba suit.
I heard that he didn't start the fire.
All right, Billy Joel. All right, Fallout Boy.
Hey, in the middle of the night.
I go walking in my sleep.
So, like, there's still crazy shit like that exists that gets its own legs and goes places. You know, I'm just some asshole sitting on my couch and I know that story. So it's just like this dude talking about, like, houses with hands in different, like, levels of the floors and shit. And, like, the killer who was, like, collecting, like, pieces of people and stuff inside of, what was it? Dental floss?
Yeah. That was, like, the first one.
We would hear about that, you know?
That would easily become a movie.
Yeah.
Well, Rockefeller's Victor Salva. He came back from Africa. That's what happened.
And that's what happened.
This has been Pasta. There is Lotsa.
Yeah. The next thing I'm going to have you back for, I don't know if it's going to happen before or after, the next story we read.
Is this with Punxsutawney?
Yeah.
Are we gonna bro out with some vamps? Are we gonna get Grampire?
We're going to look to see if we could get a Grampire.
Oh, hell yeah.
But we're gonna pull in Punxsutawney Trill for the next episode.
Dude, are you getting a dog?
It's going to be in that vein, for sure. But whether or not that happens first, or our Until Dawn playthrough happens first, we'll have to see.
That'll be fun.
But,
gotta make the right choices.
Gotta make the wrong choices.
Gotta make sure Hayden Panettiere shows us her titties.
Oh, yes, please.
Hiro Nakamura. Save the cheerleader, save the world.
Yatta!